Good morning, Judge, audience. I'm Kieran Means, and the topic for this debate will be whether or not the United States should end the arms sale to Saudi Arabia. I will be arguing for the proposition side that the U.S. should end the arms sale to Saudi Arabia due to the barbaric war in Yemen and the atrocious effects the arms sale has upon the people of Saudi Arabia. The recent arms deal President Donald Trump has made with Saudi Arabia has been a high topic of debate in recent months on whether or not it should continue. Well, quite frankly, it should not. My first contention is that the arms sale helps to fund terrorist organizations through weapons and munitions. The Saudi-led coalition in Yemen has been funded by the recent arms deal and continues to terrorize the citizens of Yemen through the war. The casualties of the war in Yemen are tremendous, and the civilian death toll is outrageous. Continuing to fund an organization that is responsible for the deaths of thousands of innocent people is not in the best interest of the United States. My second contention is that ending the arms sale will not have any type of detrimental effect upon the U.S. economy. The supposed $110 billion deal made in 2017 between President Trump and Saudi Arabia has only generated $14.5 billion. An unbelievable 7.6% of revenue has been gained in the past 2 years. That is truly an astounding number. To invest $110 billion in a deal that has only paid back 7.6% in 2 years is not a worthwhile investment for the U.S. Is it wise to continue the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia when there is only a slim margin for financial benefit? The assumption behind the arms sale was to provide for the economy, and yet the revenue gain has been so minute it would not even make a dent in the $22 trillion in U.S. national debt. My third and final contention is that the arms deal violates not only international law, but it supports the violation of human rights. Through the funding of the Saudi-led coalition, many heinous crimes have been committed against the people of Yemen. A coalition that engages in activities that violate human rights should not be supported through the U.S. through any means. Recently, schools and hospitals have been the targets of bombings by the Saudi coalition. This is in direct violation of human rights laws. The coalition fighting the war in Yemen has also used military weapons to create internationally banned munitions, such as guided missiles. The arms deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States has funded terrorist organizations, and it has not helped the economy. Is this what you want, an arms deal that provides for terrorists that does not benefit the economy? Is this the best use of the nation's vast military power? Ask yourself, do you want your tax dollars funding groups that have no difference between right and wrong, groups that target schools and hospitals? With the many flaws in the arms deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States, it is surprising that the deal has not been ended already. The arms deal is not in the best interest of the U.S. government, and it should be terminated. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sullivan Schwab. I'm the first, second, and third speaker for the opposition of the U.S. should end arms sales to Saudi Arabia, which means I will be arguing that they should not end it. Okay. First, I will refute my opponent's points. He said that it does not influence the U.S. economy. Maybe the arms sale does not, but the fact that we purchase over 10% of our oil from Saudi Arabia, it will influence the economy, because that deal could be in jeopardy and we could lose over 10% of our oil, and we need that, as we placed sanctions on Iran, not allowing oil to be imported from Iran. We need that 10% of oil. He also argued that we are funding terrorist groups, but there's also terrorist groups in Yemen that are bombing Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia needs to be able to defend themselves from these people. So although we may be the cause of loss of life in Yemen, we are also saving lives in Saudi Arabia, which will not be killed by the terrorist groups in Yemen because they have the defense. On to my three contentions. Number one, it gives us necessary leverage with the Saudi Arabia government. Going back to the 10% of oil which we import from Saudi Arabia, we need that. It also will give us the ability to speak. It gives us the ability to speak to Saudi Arabia after incidents such as the Khashoggi incident, where journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed supposedly by Saudi Arabian officials. We are also able to keep an eye on Saudi Arabia. My second argument is that it would not be influential. It would only hurt the U.S. China and Russia both have their hands in Saudi Arabia, and we would not, and they would most likely go to them for their arms if the U.S. were to pull out. And my third is that it would save U.S. citizens' lives by keeping a necessary ally in Saudi Arabia. Thank you. Please vote for the opposition.
Okay. I would first like to start off by refuting some of my opponent's claims and then move on to my three contentions. My opponent has said that the ending of the arms deal may jeopardize the oil imports from Saudi Arabia and that the U.S. is in desperate need of this oil. But this is not entirely true. While the U.S. does import oil from Saudi Arabia, the United States' biggest import of oil is from Canada at 40%. The U.S. has only imported 10% of their oil from Saudi Arabia, and as I will go on to prove, it will not have that much effect on the economy if the arms deal is ended. Now I'd like to move on to my three main contentions. My first contention is that the arms deal helps to fund terrorist organizations which oppress and murder innocent people. The sale of arms to Saudi Arabia has helped to enforce Saudi-led coalitions by providing them with weapons. The war in Yemen started in 2015 when a Saudi coalition started an organization to overthrow the previous government. Since the start of the war, the citizens of Yemen have been terrorized and murdered among all the fighting. Common spots for Yemen targets are heavily populated areas, and the civilian casualties have risen to 166 deaths per month. According to the Guardian newspaper, since 2015, 217 fishermen have been killed, and another 214 have been wounded in the fighting. These are innocent people who are just trying to live their lives, yet they are being murdered by the devices that we, the United States, provide to Saudi Arabia. With the recent purchase of F-15 bomber planes that are being used daily in the bombings of Yemen, the war is not close to an end, and the civilian casualties are tremendous. The Saudi coalition has led an average of 15 airstrikes per day for a grand total of 16,749. To provide Saudi Arabia with weapons is to support these horrendous acts against the people of Yemen. My second contention is that ending the arms sale will not have any type of detrimental effect upon the economy. The deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States, made in 2017 by President Trump, was announced to be a $110 billion deal, yet only $4 billion worth of arms have actually been sold to Saudi Arabia. It seems as though the true figures of the deal may be a lot less than what was publicly announced. The Saudi Arabia arms deal is a small part of the nation's exports and only takes up 25% of the defense industry's productions. If the U.S. were to end the arms sale to Saudi Arabia, this money could be redirected to supporting American troops fighting in Afghanistan or in Syria where it is needed the most. In the past 2 years, Saudi Arabia's import of arms has been declining and are still steadily decreasing to this day. Since the beginning of the arms deal, only 14.5% of revenue has been gained back, with a grand total with an average of 3.8% per year. At that rate, it will take an estimated 30 years to gain back all revenue from the arms deal. The arms deal is a waste of United States resources, and it will benefit the economy if it is ended. For my final contention, I will be arguing that the arms deal not only violates international law, but it supports the violation of human rights. Provided through the arms deal with the U.S., Saudi Arabia has made and used internationally banned weapons such as cluster bombs and anti-personnel landmines. As of January of 2017, the UK Ministry of Defence has recorded 252 possible violations of international law from the Saudi-led coalition. According to the Arms Export Control Act, military assistance, through soldiers or weapons, may only be used for international security or self-defense, yet the war in Yemen does not pose any of these threats to the United States. So why do we continue to supply Saudi Arabia with more weapons that will only be used to illegally commit further crimes against the people of Yemen? Not only has the Saudi coalition committed war crimes, they have also committed crimes that violate human rights. The Saudi-led coalition, being funded by the arms sale, has consistently engaged in actions that violate international human rights laws, including attacking hospitals, refugee camps, and even schools. According to the report by the Human Rights Watch, the Saudi-led coalition has led 61 airstrikes that violate international human law, some of which that can even mount war crimes. If we keep providing Saudi Arabia with more weapons, we will be continuing to support the atrocious violation of human rights and international law. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sullivan Frog, and I'm the second speaker for the opposition. I will start by refuting my opponent's points. My opponent claims that we are funding many terrorist groups by selling arms to Saudi Arabia. But as I have already said, it would not be influential because China and Russia will both most likely step in and sell the arms that that Saudi Arabia was purchasing from the U.S. to Saudi Arabia. Therefore, us pulling out would not do anything for anyone except hurt the U.S. My opponent also argued that we are not even making a small debt into the national. We are not making a small dent into the $21 trillion which the U.S. is in debt of, except we are at least making a small dent in that $21 trillion. As long as we keep working at it, we can pay off that debt. But if we just eliminate all these small things, then we will not be able to ever pay off that debt. We shouldn't only focus on big ports of revenue. We should also focus on small ones. He also argued that we are just, again, that we are filling the, on to my second contention. It would not be influential, as I said, because China and Russia both have their hands in Saudi Arabia, and they would step in to give arms to Saudi Arabia. There is also enough ammunition and guns in Saudi Arabia to fuel the war for years, for up to 6 years, which would mean that there would be 6 more years of loss of life, even if China and Russia did not step in and help the Saudi Arabian government. Thank you. Please vote for the opposition.
I would first like to start off by refuting some of my opponent's claims. My opponent has said that there are enough arms in Saudi Arabia already to fuel the war for another 6 years, yet these are arms provided by the U.S. The U.S. has already provided these arms to Saudi Arabia and caused the damage and loss of life that can be continued to 6 years. It is time to stop now before we do any further harm. Now I would like to move on to my closing argument. The arms deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States must come to an end. Continuing to support the fighting in Yemen and the economical loss the arms deal creates is not the best action there is to take. Ending the arms deal will benefit the economy and will stop providing resources to terrorist groups. The arms deal has supported terrorist organizations through weapons. It has not benefited the economy, and it is a violation of international law and human rights laws. The arms deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia continues to support the death of hundreds of civilians while the war in Yemen rages on. With an outrageous amount of civilian death, something needs to be done about the war, which will start with the ending of the arms deal. This will also help the U.S. economy, as it will stop the government spending on a contract that will exceed past the terms of 4 U.S. presidents unless it is terminated. Finally, it will put a stop to the appalling crimes against the people of Yemen and the crimes directly contradicting international law. Now is the time that something must be done. It's clear that the U.S. should end the arms sale to Saudi Arabia, as the continuation will have more of a negative impact as time goes on. For America to sit by and do nothing is not an option, as the country they are supplying weapons to is attacking their own people. I hope you'll consider the main points of my argument, and I ask that you vote for the proposition side. Thank you.
My opponent brought up that there are war crimes that Saudi Arabia has committed against Yemen, and I agree that these should not have been committed, and killing citizens of any country for any reason is a horrible, heinous act. But we cannot paint Yemen or the U.S. as some sort of angels, because the U.S. has been recorded to have committed war crimes as recently as the war on terrorism in Afghanistan and in Syria, where we have killed citizens and done heinous things as well. And Yemen has also been recorded as killing Saudi citizens, which the arms which we provide to them help defend against these war crimes. Okay. Now, to summarize my argument. The arms sales to Saudi Arabia gives the U.S. necessary leverage in the Middle East and in Saudi Arabia. It would also not be influential, as I have said, China and Russia will both step in to Saudi Arabia and fund the war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and it would only end up hurting us, and the war would continue, and the loss of life would continue. We must stop painting Saudi Arabia as this villain, as this is war and this is what war is about. We cannot. Thank you. Please vote for the opposition.